Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. In this two-part series, we sit down to talk about Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing and how they're helping to improve the public safety aviation industry. Joining us for this conversation is Tony Weller, the Director of Sales and Marketing for AEM, and Sean Rickards, the Chief Pilot and Director of Operations for Yellowhead Helicopters. Tony Weller's been with AEM for over 7 years. Tony also spent many years working in the education field as a teacher and head of department, with positions in Australia, the UK, and Canada. Sean Rickards is a professional pilot with over 30 years of experience and over 10,000 flight hours. In 2001, Sean joined Yellowhead Helicopters as a base manager, and within a few years earned the position of regional manager for Yellowhead Helicopters Northern Operations. In 2014, Sean was appointed as the Director of Operations for Yellowhead Helicopters. During his tenure, he played a pivotal role in guiding the company through a significant period of growth as the company expanded to over 40 aircraft. His passion for aviation, dedication to safety, and ability to navigate complex operations have firmly established him as a respected figure in the helicopter industry. Yellowhead Helicopters is a privately held Canadian company that has been providing commercial helicopter solutions to the public, industry, and government since 1975. From helicopter bases strategically located throughout British Columbia and Alberta, they have a wide mission set that includes aerial firefighting, utility work, and tourism, including heliskiing. For more than a decade, Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, also known as AEM, has provided customer-driven solutions to the aviation industry with the design, development, and manufacture of avionics. They're an approved OEM supplier of aircraft components to several helicopter OEMs, such as Bell, Boeing, Leonardo, Airbus Helicopters, and Sikorsky. This is a very interesting conversation that highlights AEM's commitment to developing outstanding mission equipment with the input of the end user.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, John Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Shanley.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like they're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, threw the shotgun, threw something out, grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody. You're advising code 4 on the stop.
Hey, welcome to Hangar Z podcast. I'm your host, John Gray. I have a really cool conversation in store for today. We've got a lot of folks with us here to talk about it. One of the folks I want to bring up is Halsey. How you doing, sir?
Hey, what's going on, John? Thanks for having me on. Super excited to always, anytime I can join the Hangar Z, it's always is a pleasure. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. Chance we get to operate within the Vertical Helicast platform and kind of cross-pollinate some of this stuff is really cool. So excited to have you with us for this conversation. We've got Tony Weber, not Tony Weller, coming to us from San Diego County. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing good. Twice in 2 weeks. We got to watch out. This is becoming a habit for us. Thanks for having me again.
We also have Tony Weller, so it's going to be a little bit of a tongue twist as we go through this, but it'll be a lot of fun. Tony Weller, how you doing, sir?
I'm great, thank you. Number 2, Tony. We'll go with that.
T2. And then Sean, how you doing, sir?
Good. Thanks very much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Where are you coming to us from?
Prince George, BC, center of the province.
Happy to have you all here. It's going to be a fun conversation. Excited to talk about AEM and everything you guys are doing. Yellowhead Helicopters, I don't know a whole lot about your operations, but reading about you, Sean, and what I know about the company, you guys are doing some really cool stuff up in Canada as far as firefighting, some utility stuff. So I'd like to dig into that. Before we start digging into the conversation, though, every Hangar Z podcast episode starts with the hot seat questions. So this is just kind of an opportunity for us to break the ice and go with some randomness. Being that there's 5 of us a part of this podcast, I thought I should do something to shorten a little bit so we don't spend 2 hours going through the hot seat. So this is a kind of would you rather type question. So we'll start with Sean in this, and then we'll go over to Tony Weller and follow up with Tony Weber and Halsey. So the first question, and again, this is T1. These are all really random questions, and the first one is: would you rather have 2 long front teeth like a beaver, or no teeth at all?
Well, definitely 2 long front teeth. Yeah, yeah, that'd be for sure.
Okay, all right. You like the 2 long teeth, Tony?
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go no teeth. Because if you're gonna brush some teeth, you got two massive long ones, or I just not brush my teeth at all. It's great.
Yeah, I feel like having two long front teeth would really change the way you interact with your food. It'd be difficult to do something.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of leaning in your direction.
Except for chewing trees down, then you're good.
Yes.
Yeah, as long as you're not in the desert. T1.
T1 is going with the teeth so I can chew my way out of any survival situation. So I'm going with the teeth.
Yeah, it's like the rat marks you see when they get into something. They're
through the drywall.
Their teeth marks are everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah. Halsey?
Yeah, I think teeth all day. Even if they're a little long or weird, I don't like the idea of not having teeth, so I'm going to go teeth. Even if they're beaver teeth, I'll take them.
See, I think if you had no teeth, then you could just get dentures and you'd be fine, right?
Well, but see, that doesn't seem fair, because then that wasn't part of the question. If it was like no teeth, but you can also put in nice like veneers, then okay, of course.
Well,
so
gotta think
I was taking it as teeth or no teeth. I'm going to take teeth.
Okay, got it. Next one, and Sean, will go back to you for this one. This is one of life's annoyances to me. Socks are always a big deal. I hate old socks for some reason. If it has a hole in it, it's in the trash immediately. If the elastic on the sock is going out, it's in the trash immediately. So the question is, would you rather spend the day wearing wet socks, or would you rather spend the day with a popcorn kernel stuck in your teeth?
In the teeth for sure. Absolutely hate wet feet. Yeah. Gotta be dry feet, otherwise you're cold. I hate cold feet. I've spent many a day in the bush with cold feet, and whatever it costs for a good pair of boots and socks is worth every penny.
Yep. Okay. Tony?
Yeah, I'm going the same there. Yeah. Nice socks all day.
I think one of life's biggest annoyances, though, is getting a popcorn kernel stuck in your teeth. It stays there forever. I hate it. T1?
That's why they make floss, man. I'll go with the popcorn kernel. I don't want wet feet.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Was it Forrest Gump when they give him his advice when he gets to Vietnam and tells him the first thing you have to do is take care of your feet? Always make sure you have dry socks.
Yeah, I can imagine Sean in the Canadian bush. I've had the privilege of podcasting with a few Canadian bush guys, and I can definitely see the premise of nice warm feet. And I'm gonna use it as like skiing. I ski a lot, and if my boots are wet, which was actually a little bit of the case this morning, then my foot gets damp. It's very annoying. It's very first world. But all day long, I need warm feet. Hook me up with some sock heaters even. I mean, I'll do anything to keep my feet warm.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. All right, last question. We tend to have food-related questions as part of the hot seat as well. So this is kind of a ode to our food-related questions. Sean, we're going to go back to you. Would you rather have, for every meal you eat the rest of your life, would you rather have it be too spicy or too sweet?
Too sweet. Yeah.
Too sweet?
Yeah, I got bad
Do
sweet
you like
tooth.
spicy food?
I like spicy food too, but yeah, definitely a sweet tooth.
Okay. Tony?
Yeah, I'm going spicy.
Spicy.
Give me the heat.
I feel like it's too hot. You can drink a little bit of milk. You could figure that out. Too sweet, like what do you do with too sweet as far as neutralizing that,
Exactly. Well, I think you got to be careful here because we keep giving Halsey all the outs for the options here. So,
Tony Weber.
I'm a medium spice guy, so I'm going to go with the sweet. Too spicy it's not good for me. Yeah.
Surprising being down in San Diego, the world's best Mexican food.
My wife will outdo me every time and go spicy, though. Makes me look bad.
Sean, for you, when it comes to spice, would you rather have like chili spice, like Mexican food spice, or like wasabi spice for sushi?
Well, I like them both actually, but yeah, a good Indian spice is nice too.
Yeah, I'm not big on the Indian spice, but the wasabi, oh man, good wasabi burn is amazing. Not liking it, Halsey?
I love spice. The problem with spice for me, unfortunately, is my body doesn't love spice. So I like when spice hits my mouth. And then like 10, 15 minutes later, sometimes even the next day, I'm not so excited about the spice. So because of my body's reaction to that, I'll probably just have to stick with sweet. But I do love spice. As I've gotten older, I've had to taper off a little bit. But I've been known to sweat a little bit while eating a meal, and I'm perfectly happy with that. But I think if if I had to choose, I'd have to go sweet.
Okay. All right. Tony Weller, back to you. As far as the type of spice, what do you prefer?
Yeah, give me that wasabi spice. So I lived in Vancouver for a number of years, and there's some pretty good sushi there. And then I've also spent some time in Japan as well, and just I really like that. And then of course it's part of the horseradish family, so adding a nice lump of horseradish to your steak or roast beef is also a winner for me. So. Yeah, give me that.
Yeah, you brought up Vancouver. That's a beautiful city. I got a chance to spend 3 or 4 days there on 2 days on either side of a cruise we went on, and really impressed with the city. Had a lot of fun there. That's cool. You got to live there. Yeah,
it's a gorgeous location. You got to be prepared to like rain though. It's a little bit like Seattle, very similar geographies there. So it was a little bit much for us in the end of it. So that's why we moved to the drier part of the province.
Yeah, well, rain is tough. Halsey, you guys, I'm sure, can sympathize with that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the Willamette Valley of Portland, just below Seattle. Very rainy, very wet. Lived in Texas for the last 10 years, and that was not too bad, but hot in the summer. And now we're in Central Oregon, which is actually pretty cool because it's like a high desert. So we actually get fairly good weather. And you drive 35, 40 minutes, and you're some really nice mountain skiing. So I think Central Oregon's kind of a prime spot for good weather and good skiing.
Not as good as the weather in San Diego, though. I'll just throw that out there.
But the skiing is better.
The skiing.
We don't have any.
Well, thank you guys. That's the hot seat. Like I said, I tried to keep it fairly simple for today. That way we can get through it and focus on the conversation at hand. I want to thank you guys, Tony Weller, AEM, for making this conversation possible. Really fun to sit down with you guys and go through what you're doing for the industry, what you guys are doing in general. So thank you again for joining us. You guys are making some really cool radios and changing the technology and the way that's done. Can you just kind of introduce yourself, Tony, and talk about yourself, the role you're in now, and what AEM's doing?
Thank you guys for putting this all together as well, for creating the concept initially. Since the MHM group picked it up, being an avid listener, so working through a lot of the back catalog, which has been awesome for us, just to kind of listen to the stories that are going on within the industry, and then at times able to kind of pick and understand where we might sit in some of those stories sometimes, with some of the products and the customers or our customers that are on your podcast. So for me, as an introduction to the listeners there, I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing at AEM. So I've been with AEM for since 2016. It's a pretty cool organization to be part of, and we're a growing organization. Everything's located here in Kelowna, BC. So we've got all of our production and design stuff, and everything is all here out of our factory. And then the focus for me specifically is to kind of guide and lead the sales and marketing team. And so that's from a global perspective. So it's not just our North American, our US and Canadian customers, but it's really a global presence. We're soon to have aircraft operating with our gear on it in all 7 continents, because there's a couple of aircraft headed to Antarctica later on this year with some of our kit on there. So we're pretty excited about that.
For the folks that aren't familiar with you guys, can you give a little snapshot of what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So our specialty is in the special mission communication categories. So we provide a number of product categories out to the market. So we have high-powered internal and external loudspeaker systems, digital audio system offering, obviously some radio products, because we're going to chat about those today, some replacement consoles for the A-Star helicopter. So you can either have a replacement of the switch console from the OEM, or you can install a larger one with extra avionics installation room. And then we have some replacement master caution panels as well for a couple of airframe types, Bell 212, S61, and the Twin Otter. Yeah,
you talk about the special missions community and law enforcement and fire in particular. If you can't communicate, you can't do the job. And law enforcement, we were just talking about PA systems yesterday. We talk about the importance of those when it comes to searching for lost children, for elderly folks that have gone missing. And then the fire setting as well. Tony Weber, has got all the experience in the world dealing with fire radios and what that looks like. So again, excited to dig into what you guys are doing in the community and how you're improving the ability for folks to communicate. You guys have a really special partnership with Yellowhead Helicopters. You guys have worked with them for quite a while. So Sean, you've joined us today to talk about your career and how you guys are utilizing their products. Can you introduce yourself and just give us a little snapshot of your career so far?
I started with Yellowhead in 2000. Before that, I started my flying career in 1992. Went up to the Arctic and did a couple of years up there towing geophysical bird and exploration type work. And then came back into BC and got a job with Northern Mountain Helicopters in the day and ended up going bankrupt in 2000, and Yellowhead picked up a bunch of their assets, and I ended up going along with it. So yeah, I've been here a long time and been flying pretty much almost my whole life.
You don't have a whole lot of flight hours, just like 10,000 plus.
Yeah, it's not a huge amount. I do have some buddies here with 15, 20,000 in helicopter alone, right? And but that's typically when you're doing long-term production work like heli logging or seismic, that kind of stuff. They can pound on the hours pretty quick. And then the last bunch of years, I've been doing a lot of managing. So I backed off the flying in the last, definitely the last 8 years.
And what was your early experience like in Antarctica?
It was pretty impressive. I mean, I grew up in Kelowna actually, and basically went to Vancouver and got my license, and did a couple of years there down in the Lower Mainland, and heard a guy was hiring in Yellowknife on the types that I was trained on, and so I bought a one-way ticket to Yellowknife and went up there. And fortunately, I mean, that was 1992. It was a little bit easier to find work in those days, so I got a job with this fella in about a month, and I flew the rest of the summer, and then I went back, did some odd jobs during the winter months, still low-time pilot, and then did it one more season. And so fortunately, I didn't have to spend a winter there, but the summers were pretty impressive. And of course, coming from Lower Mainland and growing up in the Okanagan and hitting Yellowknife in June, you think you're in summer camping mode, but quickly I had to phone my parents. Thankfully, they came to my rescue and set me up some down sleeping bags and some proper tents, and because I was living in the campsite there for the first few weeks until I got a job. So yeah, it was a fun start, and definitely a wide awake to helicopters at that point. Bush flying in Canada, really. I mean, no GPSs or anything.
Can you talk a little bit about Yellowhead and what you guys are doing with your operations?
I started with them in 2000, and that time they were about 8 or 10 helicopters, and that was their first main expansion. They started in 1975. Gary Foreman, who's still the president and the father, it's a family-run business. He started in 1975 with one Jet Ranger in Vilmont, BC, which is about 3 hours south and east of Prince George. And grew it till 2000s when they bought some of the assets off Northern Mountain. And unfortunately, I was at the time running a base and flying, and one of those bases went to them. So, and then from there, they grew slowly and methodically until 2013 when a VIH, Vancouver Island Helicopters, decided to sell off their VFR division and keep their logging pretty much, and a few other their ventures. But we bought into them business units, oil and gas, and heli skiing and mining, and with that came all the people and the helicopters. So basically went from 18 helicopters to 30, almost 40 in 2013, and so that was a large step. And from then, just been kind of cleaning up our fleet and diversifying it, and diversifying our work and cleaning up our fleet and our types and that, and getting to a point where we're in a good position now, running. We own over 40 aircraft, but plan to run between 30 and 40 through the next bunch of years.
You brought up heliskiing. Is that something you guys are still a part of?
Absolutely. Actually, Gary Foreman was one of the first heli-ski pilots out there, taking some of these pioneers of CMH and Mike Wigley out to explore their tenures. And he's also one of the pilots that helped develop rescue flying in the parks, human external load work. So at one point, Yellowhead owned and still does own Robson Heli Magic, but we currently still do have a tenure, but sublet it to our client, and did our own skiing in-house, and did that for a lot of years. And then over years, we've had a few customers, but our current one, large one right now, is Mike Wigley out of Blue River, and that's 10 aircraft down there.
Yeah, growing up, Warren Miller was my hero. I used to watch the Warren Miller films all the time, and every Warren Miller film, there's some heli-skiing parts in there. Did we see any Yellowhead helicopters throughout any of the Warren Miller era?
No, he was there in the probably the late 90s and that when he was really big into Mike Wigley. And so if you do see some of it, it'll be probably some old Vancouver Island Helicopters. Northern Mountain actually was prior. So Vancouver Island, funnily enough, bought a lot of the Northern Mountain assets that Yellowhead didn't and other people didn't. And then, about 13 years later, they sold a big portion of those assets to Yellowhead. So this industry, as you all probably all know, goes around in circles.
Yeah.
Whether the helicopters or the people.
Yeah.
And the... yeah.
I'm curious. I'm curious to hear about the collaboration, of course, with AEM and Yellowhead. 10,000 hours, Sean. That's I have like 3,000, and I think I'm pretty cool. So 10,000 is pretty special and awesome. I can only imagine that you've garnered some pretty wild experiences. What has been the makeup of that 10,000 hours? I mean, obviously you're in the bush. I'm guessing you're doing a lot of utility style flying, external load. Is there like a kind of are you considering yourself like a utility guy? And, if so, like what is kind of one of your favorite things that you've done in a helicopter operational wise, mission specific or something that was like a really fun, cool thing that you enjoy doing?
That's a lot to digest there. Yeah. Pick that one apart and let's start with a simple one. It was something that I really enjoyed doing. So, or actually more so, what I have done is pretty much everything except for spraying, and that's what we currently do. We do dabble a bit of everything, and the only thing we really haven't gone into is aerial herbiciding or spraying and stuff like that. But my background, I started in the pool in the 90s and was able to pound on a lot of hours. I mean, aviation's changed in Canada in the last 30 years that I've been doing it, and definitely the 90s I think were the tail end of the glory days, where 90s and into the early 2000s when you can fly a lot of hours. If you wanted to work, it was not hard to fly 1,000 hours a year if you wanted to. So that encompassed just everything. If you had the gumption or the ability, companies then would, in Northern Mountain specifically in the day, would, as we like to say sometimes affectionately, throw you to the wolves. If you looked like you could do it, they would send you out. You ever fought before? Nope. Okay, well, this is the bucket, and that's the fire over there with the smoke, and off you go, and you learn by fire or trial and error. And a lot of good people out in those days, a lot of mentor pilots too that you could work with and glean that information. But so yeah, I've done a number of things, everything from exploration to heli skiing to firefighting to forestry, oil and gas. But in the last 20 years, basically, and right at around the time Northern Mountain went under and Yellowhead bought in, I was running the base in just west of Prince George here, and that's sort of where I started getting into running a base and enjoyed the taste of dictating your own direction rather than being at somebody's beck and call on a 2-and-2. So it was kind of enjoyed that, and then moved into operating a base in Prince George. So I was running 2 bases and then 3 bases, and then became the regional manager for Yellowhead, and then eventually stepped into the role of director of operations, which I've been currently doing for about 8 years now.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm jealous. I mean, I haven't had an opportunity to do like a ton of utility flying like you or Tony. And, I think especially up in Canada, you guys are kind of the mecca of that style of flying. And it's, just something that Canadian pilots, I think, have above some of the opportunities that we have here in the States. So that's super cool. I'm always a little bit curious of like what it's been like for you now, 8 years in the director of operations role. Obviously, you had some management experience before that. Do you still get to fly quite a bit, or have you had to hang up the flight helmet, so to speak, to really get into that more management role where you have that operational control and oversight?
In the last 3-4 years, definitely really backed off flying and just not enough time for it. And especially in this last year, some of you might be aware, the new flight and duty regulations came into effect in December of last year. So 2023, I guess 2022, they came in. And so all of 2023, we were under new regulations, which monitor hours worked per day. So to do a management role and then go flying and carry passengers was pretty much impossible. So you can only kind of go out and do fire work or external load work. So I got enough people that can do that and probably do it much better than I can nowadays because I've been away from it. But for the most part, in the last, before that, I was flying probably a couple hundred hours a year, still 100 to 200 hours a year. And funnily enough, my life insurance people said I was a danger at that point. If you fly 50 hours, you can get this rate. If you fly 500 hours, you can get this rate. But if you fly 100 to 200 hours, your rate goes way higher because you're now a danger.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Not to mention the 10,000 hours of experience that you already have.
Yeah, that's right. And, we keep regular. And of course, I'm unlike probably most private pilots, the recurrent training is second to none. I feel at Yellowhead anyway. We put a lot of money and effort and time and have a very good training department. So we constantly being trained and recurrent trained. And if you would need to pick up on hone some skills, we can make that happen. So.
My final question, and then again, I want to kind of talk about your guys' collaboration with AEM, and you can answer as I guess as you can. But I've always been told if you have 10,000 hours of anything, that makes you an expert in what you're doing. And I feel like with the few thousand hours that I have in a helicopter, I feel fairly comfortable in a helicopter. When you've reached 10,000 plus hours, I mean, do you feel? I mean, obviously, we always go into the helicopter and approach it, always being able to learn something. But man, it's like most of your life has been spent in a helicopter by this point. I mean, that must just feel kind of like your second home.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are perishable skills within our business, especially external load work. If you're not doing that kind of stuff, I wear reading glasses now, so it's hard to see the end of a 200-foot long line. These kind of things. So there's some things you just you don't get any better at, and you'll actually start getting worse at. But one thing I've always enjoyed about this business is the variety, and that's one of the reasons I got into running a bases and being kind of on the base structure was just the variety of work. I mean, I've done a bit of everything and learned a bit of everybody's jobs, and that's always kept me interested in wanting to come back. And I mean, there's not many jobs, right, that you take your camera to work every day with you and you snap a couple pictures if nothing else, right? So just kind of define what the best kind of jobs I've done. I don't know, I've just done so many. I can probably tell you some of the worst ones is that's probably easier to find because there's so few of those, right? But to find the best jobs, we've done wildlife capture, fisheries work, some of the time sitting on a river when you fly 3 or 4 hours a day and spend the rest of the day fishing while your crew's kind of swimming down and counting fish is a pretty nice way to spend your office day, right, so to speak. So yeah, there's a bit of everything there for you, and that's a nice thing about helicopters too, as you guys probably know, is just there's so many different avenues of work. And I started flying airplanes when I was 15 and did my private pilot's license, and I always thought, I don't want to go airport to airport, and that's definitely for some people. It wasn't for me. And then saw the helicopter industry and what they did, and basically put my effort into getting that license, and never really had any gumption to do anything else, unfortunately. So as I get older, the only thing I can do now is management in helicopters, because I can't go and start over again. So ideally, you can take that knowledge that you've gained over the last 30 years and the hours that you've flown in the bush, which I think is a real help, when you're looking at jobs or bidding jobs or putting people to work and assessing people's abilities and skill sets to go into a job that at least I've done some of it. I'm not definitely an expert in any of it. Like say I'm like a Bell 206. I do a little bit of everything fairly well.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
I think about flying in the bush, and I think of having to be very resourceful with resources when it comes to maybe a parts issue you've come across or things that don't go your way. Can you talk about one of those situations you've come across in the bush that's presented some difficulties and coming up with some unique examples of ways to fix that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely over the last few decades, communication has gotten, tenfold. I mean, it's not hard to not be stuck in the bush anymore. But, there's, unfortunately, I've never, had to spend overnight. And unfortunately, I've only had to have one of my crews spend a night that I couldn't pick up out of the bush at the end of the day. And that's usually due to snow. So it's, it can keep you... There's a lot to think about when you're out there and flying around in the different types of weather and terrain that we're dealing with.
Sean, I had a few questions about aerial firefighting. I know Southern California and Canada are two different worlds, obviously. I got to see your topography up there, and it is a lot different than ours. When you're out there in your mediums, are you flying solo, or do you have a fire personnel up front with you? And are you mostly running buckets, and is anybody running any tanks up there in Canada, or is it mostly buckets?
Yes. So there's only one jurisdiction in Canada right now. And unfortunately, Canada, as said, it's different. Each province runs their own fire agencies, so there can be some differences between and competency requirements and how they do their business for the most part. So Ontario right now is the only province that puts a a fire technician or bomb technician in the seat with a Bell medium or any of our mediums classed helicopters. The rest of the country is directed by bird dogs or, again, some small industries, so they know pilots. If they know a certain pilot and they can trust them, they'll just say, go get that target over there, and off they go and do their day. Combination of buckets and tanks. A lot of government contracts are coming out now requiring tanks. It obviously offers some more versatility, but with tanks, obviously there's also some restrictions to that, and that's where the bucket really comes in. What we're seeing is probably, tanks are nice for sure, and some agencies are wanting them, but at the end of the day, if you have a Bambi fast bucket or something with a snorkel, you'll be the helicopter that stays the longest on the fire because you're more useful, right, and have more tricks and the tools in the bag.
Yeah, are you guys Yellowhead?
And tanks are super expensive too, right?
Oh yeah, well, we run tanks only because we're over houses a lot, and it's the whole external load and losing it. Are you guys running air attack above your large fires?
The larger fires, yeah, absolutely. There's a bird dog and an air attack officer. And once we get to that stage of fires, then yes, you have your whole incident command team that comes in, very much structured like a U.S. Type of Forest Service, but a little looser, I would say. Okay. I've done a lot of initial attack in my days and project burns and on major fires and that. So, but yeah, air attack officer. But otherwise, yeah.
You guys running heli attack crews?
Yeah, we have initial attack crews and both initial attack and para-attack. So we do jumpers in British Columbia here. I don't think any other province does para-attack.
Last question, just do you guys have a carding process for your fires every year? And if so, how does that work?
No, man. And unfortunately, it is a problem. We've brought that up. It's been brought up to us as an industry by various Forest Service. I think British Columbia is probably the biggest concern. I mean, we have a lot of mountainous areas. Alberta has the eastern foothills there of the Rocky Mountains, and definitely a lot of mountainous areas, but it's more contained. But British Columbia, they have competency issues, and we've said that as an industry. If we're obviously pretty honest. We have a very structured system, and we want to go back and firefight. But there are the fly-by-nighters out there that, and it's been said, the pilot shows up on the fire and they say, "You've been on here before." Or they were told by the director of operations or the operations manager that they've got lots of experience, and they show up and sorry, I've never been in the mountains before, and it's a bit of a scary situation. So they do have a problem with that, but. Again, a bit of a smaller industry. The only time they have real problems is when it's just busy and there isn't a helicopter available, and they're almost taking kind of whoever they can get at that point. But
just one last question. The whole carding thing, and we do have it down here, obviously in California with the Forest Service and CAL FIRE. On a large fire, let's say you have somebody that's on that fire, and safety-wise, they're just not doing the right things. Is there somebody there that uninvites them from the fire and kind of grounds them?
Yeah, for sure. That would be the air attack, or each fire center or province has its own jurisdictions on firefighting, and then within the provinces are usually broke up into zones. So if a fire center will control that whole area, and if there's any concerns with the pilot or they're not doing their job, it's really more so a safety issue. If they're not efficient or they're not putting as much water in the fire, they'll keep them until they absolutely don't need them anymore. Again, if it's an average fire year in Canada, the helicopter industry can handle it. But if you get 2 or 3 provinces burning and big burns, then we're absolutely strapped for resources, or they are strapped for resources, because we got regular work too. We're not, out of our company of 40 aircraft, our 6 Bell mediums are usually dedicated to fires. But last year we only had 1 on fires. The rest are all dedicated to projects that were hired up in April and long term and guarantees. And you kind of sometimes take the bird in the hand and then try to wait for see what the fire season's going to do. And the government's here to put out very few contracts, and the ones they do put out really aren't economical for you to bid on, especially in this market right now with the interest rates and fluctuating dollars.
Tony Weber, going back to you, well, you're talking about air attack, and if you've got an unsafe helicopter operating over a fire, what does that look like for you guys locally here in Southern California?
The same thing there. You have air attack up above, usually about 2,500 feet, and they are for us running the show. And if there is somebody unsafe, they will ask them, hey, go back if there's a helibasin established. Hey, November so-and-so or 17, they have a number. Hey, can you go back to the helibase? And once they get at the helibase, they won't do it over the air, but once you land, somebody, one of the helicopter managers, will come over and have a conversation with you on, hey, we need you to fix this, this, and this, and if not, you basically get uninvited or you're grounded. And it's all safety related.
I'm interested, if you all don't mind, I'll jump in real fast, but I'm interested to hear about the collaboration with AEM and Yellowhead and kind of what that relationship has been like and how that's, to AEM, instrumental to being able to create a product that pilots, essentially is like an approved by a pilot product. So I'm just kind of curious of how that relationship happened. I'm guessing kind of organically, and how that's how helps you develop the products that you guys develop.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Halsey. The relationship has certainly matured over the last couple of years with Yellowhead as Yellowhead has started using more and more of our products and giving us some direct feedback at times, which has been good. It's helped to improve our operations and ultimately what we're delivering to the customer. But we had started working with Yellowhead there a couple of years back as they were working through an upgrading process on a bunch of the A-Stars. And there was a Bell conference in town here that takes place every year. And a crew from Yellowhead came down and they said, hey, come check out our new building. And so they brought a whole crew of people over to see the new building and to meet some of the key people in our organization from the quality engineering and production side. As we were kind of doing the tour and just kind of came up in conversation, hey, is there anything new you guys are working on? And we said, well, sure there is, but you have to sign an NDA first. And they were like, okay, let's sign the NDA. And then we're able to kind of showcase what we're doing on the radio development side. And we had got to a point with the project where we were pretty confident that we were headed in the right direction. But we ultimately needed some feedback from an organization who would be using this radio on almost basically a day-to-day basis. And then we're also looking for, coincidentally, a launch customer. And so we were able to kind of work out an arrangement there whereby we'd keep the Yellowhead team pretty close as we continued on the development and look to them for feedback. I know we went up there a couple times and sat down around the table with a few different people from the organization and had them bash and test it and provide feedback to us, which ultimately helped to finish off the final product. And then, as we've continued along that process with Yellowhead, it's brought us even closer together. Yellowhead's doing some pretty cool things with their fleet, what their approach is to their fleet. And I'd like to think that we're helping them achieve their goals there of being a really forward-looking, progressive helicopter operating company.
Before the conversation, I was able to dig into what the new radios are producing. Can you talk about the new fire radio that you guys have made and kind of what separates that from other products that you guys have and what might be available outside of AEM?
Yeah, for sure. On the radio side, like our journey as AEM on the radio product line started to basically, I think it was 2020. We were asked by an OEM customer of ours to help them with a certain customer project, a fairly bespoke project that involved a mission radio. And so that was our foray or our beginning into the mission radio side of the business. And so we completed that project and then ended up creating another part number for that customer as well, which we're able to offer that out to other organizations as well. And then as we're working through these projects, we're looking ahead going, okay, what else can we do here? Where else is some opportunities to make some improvements in the marketplace, to bring a product to market that people obviously buy? Where can we help solve some problems? Where are the pain points? And so we started doing some market research there and engaging with a couple of key stakeholders within the industry. We had a feeling where we needed to go. And so we're chatting to the guys at U.S. Forestry Service and a number of kind of high profile operators going, if you had some pain points that needed fixing, what would they be? And so that was the genesis of this new forestry radio that we're bringing to market here. And so with our module provider and our R&D team, we're able to come up with an innovative way of looking at it to produce something that's kind of the next generation of this radio for the marketplace. And we think that we're solving a lot of the pain points that were existing within the marketplace.
Anytime I feel like a company is dedicated to their craft and they look to the end user for feedback on the design of a new project, I think it's really smart, and it develops a really, not only a good product, from a sales standpoint, but an effective product for the special missions market by itself. So genius from my perspective that you guys did that, because I feel like a lot of companies, you might have some really smart engineers that in theory have some good ideas, but it may not be applicable to what we're doing. So the fact, again, that you guys are using the end user to help develop it is really smart.
And here's a silly question too, and sorry to break in, but I'm not a fire guy, right? I've never fought fire. So I'm actually, like, if you wouldn't mind, and probably for some of my listener audience as well, just kind of back up just a tad on like a forestry radio. What is that compared to what we're just used to as regular comms in a helicopter? Just to make sure that I understand, and of course my audience is kind of tracking the same note, and kind of curious of what were some of the previous pain points, and now what does this next generation look like?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll do my best here, Sean. If I miss anything or if I make an error, please jump in. So basically within the U.S. market, the U.S. Forestry Service is operating a P25 digital network for the most part. And so you need a radio that's capable of connecting into that network. And then within each kind of fire district is you're going to have a series of channel sets which have different codes and access requirements to it, different channel names depending on which zone you're flying in, which part of the fire you're working on, and then you have your fire boss up the top there who's coordinating all of those assets. So they're monitoring multiple radios within their aircraft to a helicopter operator who's operating maybe one or two in their aircraft depending on the size of it. In BC, we're still on an analog network up here, but Alberta's on a P25 digital. So for guys like Yellowhead, who will jump across the border to work on different fires depending on what's going on, as they've got to have that capability across their assets. The other thing is we talked at the start about communication being super important. There's so much happening in a helicopter to begin with, just for a regular operator to now bring it into an environment where it's hotter, there's smoke, that you're in danger, you've got a big bucket of water 200 feet underneath you, and you've got multiple assets operating in that same region. You've got guys on the ground who you're trying not to dump water on top of. The operability of your radio is absolutely paramount. It can't break down. You have to know exactly what function to do when. You need to be able to have fantastic audio quality through that product, but if you've got to go visual and look at something, you want to make sure all that information is there so you can see it at the first point. You don't have to hunt around in a menu somewhere or remember how to program it. It should all be super intuitive and easy to operate. So that's really what we focused on for the product, is making sure that it's got a really long duty cycle, which makes it basically a lower risk of malfunctioning, and that it's easy and intuitive to use from just a straight, channel selection and operation standpoint, all the way up to programming it. It's fairly simple and intuitive. And you touched on earlier, really smart engineers who have a great idea and okay, we can engineer this feature or whatever into the product. But then when you sit down in front of the pilot or the operating group, like we did at Yellowhead, and we go, okay, guys, this is how this works, and they go, no. That's not. It needs to go like this, because if you do it this way, now you remove those steps, and this is why it needs to be done that way. And I think we did a pretty good job of that, of working with the Yellowhead team to kind of work through those feedback cycles. and as a vertically integrated company, from a hardware perspective as well, we're able to really quickly iterate changes in the product so that we can get it tested and the prototypes back in front of people so they can make those assessments.
You talked about being intuitive. Intuitive operation is so important when it comes to special operations. Whether in law enforcement or fire, a lot of times you're operating in a stressful environment. The last thing you want to do when you're operating in a stressful environment is have to look down and figure out exactly what you're trying to do. It should be intuitive. It should be easy to figure out. So that's a key in my book for a successful product when it comes to these markets, because it does need to be intuitive and quickly accessible, for different situations. So I love that you guys are focused on that too. That's huge.
Yeah, that resonates across the entire special mission spectrum, I think, John. And we hear that a lot, particularly of the users of our audio system. While everyone's kind of, let's say, flying the similar kind of missions, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, they all have slightly different operating procedures, slightly different, setups on their aircraft in terms of the camera that they're operating or the moving map system or whatever. So just because everyone's slightly different with their equipment and their operating procedure, you need to make sure that whatever you're providing them as a system or product kind of fits into there or can be customized so that it becomes intuitive operation. You don't have to think about it. You can just do it because your workload, your stress level is already so high. To be able to alleviate anything off that and bring it down just makes life so much easier. You get a better outcome for your mission and a better outcome for the staff.
When it comes to R&D, obviously there's a lot of different companies out there that are doing R&D and they're doing it in helicopters. I can only relate it to the FAA, but obviously there's always a lot of red tape when you're putting things in helicopters. I'm going through it right now with a 135 that we're bringing in from Europe. It has a 650 and a 750 in it, Garmin GPSs, but it's this big funny thing that EASA is not recognized and blah, blah, blah. So we're having to go a field approval route. I kind of just sitting here curious as we're talking, like what is the red tape involved in putting a piece of equipment in a helicopter that's maybe still under R&D? Is there a lot of hurdles to jump through, Sean and Tony, on your end?
This is the end of part 1 of our conversation with Tony Weller and Sean Rickards. Stand by for a message after a word from AEM, who has generously sponsored this episode of the Hangar Z podcast.
Thanks to our sponsor, Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, a leading manufacturer of trusted special mission avionics for law enforcement, aerial firefighting, and utility operators. Visit www.aem-corp.com and learn how AEM's digital communication and loudspeaker systems, avionics consoles, radios, and specialty audio products can support your most demanding missions.
Thank you again to AEM for sponsoring this episode of the Hangar Z podcast. HAI is a week away from the release of this recording, so be sure to visit AEM at their booth located at booth number 2008. And don't forget to join us at the Vertical booth number 5716 on Wednesday, February 28th from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. to say hello to the Vertical Helicast team, which includes myself, Halsey Scheider of the Helicopter Podcast, and Jason Quinn from the Little Rescue Podcast. Vertical is also partnered with Precision Aviation Group to host a beer party during that time. Our friend K9 Torque will also be there to say hello to her friends. Hope to see y'all there. Cheers.
Time to close up the hangar. Thanks for joining us on the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicast.